All right, again, my name is Al Romain, and we also have Rick Notman here with us, who's going to be doing the presentation. I just wanted to give a couple of quick notes before we start. Our annual conference this year is going to be held virtually, so be looking out for that because obviously we can't meet in the fall yet. And if you're thinking about the switch to Spire, don't think for too long, because especially if you've got an older version of Business Vision, you'll want to get it up, either upgraded or switch to Spire or something else by the end of the year, because older versions of Business Vision won't go beyond December 31st of this year. But again, don't wait too long, because we anticipate this is going to be a very, very, very busy year, as we're already doing a lot of conversions right now, and you want to get into the queue of getting switched over. So price-wise, you're going to find that upgrading your Business Vision to the latest version is going to be more expensive than switching to Spire in a lot of cases. I've noticed a few prices that people have talked to me about, so you want to be thinking about that. And really, there's no bad time to switch, so it doesn't matter if we're mid-month or mid-year. Because we convert all the Business Vision data, it will start up where you left off, so there's no need to balance it out and get going first. So. And lastly, I just want to say there's a questions panel there, so go ahead and key in questions as Rick does his presentation if you think of something, and we will go over all those questions at the end. So, you know, as long as you want to stay connected, we'll keep on answering questions. So that's about it. Rick, why don't you go ahead and take it from there?
Great. Okay, thanks, Al. Yeah, so as Al was mentioning, this is going to be the second in kind of a series of presentations talking about going from Business Vision to Spire, and some things to know and some functionality that I think you'll get some really good use out of. I don't want to spend too long in PowerPoint, so I'm just going to go through a couple of quick slides. Who am I? If you saw the previous presentation, you probably heard me talk about my experience at Business Vision, and I was there for about 15 years and have since been a user of Spire and Business Vision, partner myself, and a customer. I've also got development experience with developing add-ons for both Spire and Business Vision, and a fair bit of Spire at this point as well. So if there's anybody qualified to kind of give you information about the difference between these packages and to encourage you in areas where Spire is superior, I'm probably the top of the list in terms of knowledge of both products. What's the goal of this presentation? To continue to discuss features primarily, to talk a little bit about why technology here is important, and to really kind of encourage you to have a look at Spire. I would say that really almost everything about Spire is designed to be, you know, some advancement in terms of what Business Vision does, and I'll show you lots of different examples. And of course, the most important point here is that Spire is continuing to develop those advancements. So I'm going to show you some really new features that really only came in the last couple of months, really make life easier and the product better going forward. Our goal here is really to build a better mousetrap, and I think we're doing a good job picking those things that most facilitate your ongoing business use of Spire. A quick technology recap. There's two slides here. I don't want to spend too much time, but I know there was questions at the end of the last presentation. So just to note, Business Vision's a local area network-based software. It uses a pervasive database, which is a transactional database engine, has no API to speak of, communicates through record locks, which is got a bit of an issue to it, which I'll explain. Uses Crystal, it's written in Micro Focus COBOL, and it doesn't use SQL transactions. Spire is also currently a land-based system, intranet-based, so it uses HTTP to communicate over a network. Postgres is the database that the server communicates with. That's important because it's a full SQL database. So that means that you have full access to the relational database capabilities of modern database engine, which is primarily about quickly being able to read information. Uses optimistic record locking, which basically means that unlike in Business Vision, you're not going to see messages like you can't get into the control file because it's locked, or you can't access this record because it's locked. Uses Crystal also primarily to facilitate optimization of reports and forms. It's written in Python, uses Q, which is the kind of the UI tools used for communicating back and forth with the database, as well as painting screens and the various different objects. And one of the key things, which I'll talk about towards the end of the presentation, is good API, meaning that third-party developers can work more easily with the application, and there's functionality there that even you can use. So I'll show you some examples of how to do things like create an order quickly using the API. Most important things, it's designed to answer questions that Business Vision couldn't. I won't go into the history, I did that in the previous presentation, but BV Essentials was the precursor to Spire, and BV Essentials was an application that worked in conjunction with Business Vision to provide additional functionality. So we've really taken everything that BV Essentials was and ran with it and went even further. It's getting better and better with each release. The goal here, as I say, is to build a better mousetrap. That means what can we give you that will make it easier for you to run your business, surface information more quickly, make order processing faster, those kinds of things. We design based on principles that are really adhered to pretty closely, and that's both to your advantage because it means that we can develop software more quickly, but it's also to our advantage in that there's a consistency in how things work. Our goal here is really to provide solutions to problems, not just gadgets, meaning that in our development meeting, talk about a new feature, we want to know this is going to provide value. We're less concerned about whether or not it looks as good as, or looks aren't really the primary thing. It's all about what value do we provide. So we're really an established company, making better software, and we've been doing it now for quite a while. I think that's it. So let's jump out of here, and I'm going to start up Spire. And you'll notice that when I log in, that Spire basically starts up showing you the IP address of your current machine where the server is installed. And it'll also show you an edit server list where you can add your server. In this case, my particular machine is my server, so I can go ahead and log in. So I'm just going to log in with my user ID and password, and that will take me into the company list where I can choose amongst the companies that I might have available. And I can log on, and because I've logged on as what's referred to as an admin user, I have access to pretty much everything. So all the modules that I have access to for licenses, as well as all the modules that I might potentially use, ARAP, customer inventory, sales processing, and so on. So let's jump right in. I'm going to start in a place that I normally would never start, which is payroll. I wanted to show payroll as an example of a major difference between the philosophy of Business Vision versus the philosophy of Spire. So you'll see I have two payroll batches that I've already processed. To do a new payroll batch, I just start up, specify the date I want the batch to be, so the pay date, and choose add all employees or add all time cards. So what's different here than in Business Vision is that even for an hourly payroll, I'm basically working with a batch of time cards. And it's actually quite easy for me now to work through that list. If I'm entering in hours, I just select the employee, specify the number of hours that they worked, and move on to the next employee. Specify the number of hours that they worked, and so on. So it makes hourly payroll really easy. You can even import this as well. So move along, just specifying who's got hours and so on. Normally, when you're working on hourly payroll, you'll be doing this over the course of a couple of days. As timesheets roll in, you're modifying this. So accordingly, without having to post it, you can save it, and it just persists that batch. So whether it's 5 employees or 500 employees, you're basically just working towards filling out the information necessary for you to do your payroll. So let's load that up. When you're ready, when you've decided it's time to post, all you have to do to finalize that process is choose post time cards and post all. And that finalizes the process and takes you into producing a printed paycheck or an EFT deposit file that you can send to the bank. Let's preview that. And what you'll see when it pops up in the preview is that there's the actual paychecks for the employees. So once that batch is done, I can basically close it, and the batch shows up as a posted batch. So really straightforward to do hourly time cards, and far easier to do than what you have to go through in Business Vision to kind of maintain that same process. Lots of tools available. When you're in these time card batches, you can continually modify them even after they're posted. So you can do things like void time cards. You can do things like enter in additional time cards. Business Vision calls them supplementary. Spire calls them irregular time cards or additional time cards. But essentially, those are all sort of functional things that you can do within the batch. Lots of nice changes have come over time. One neat one is if I go in and show you the payroll department. So if I go into looking at payroll departments, you can have many payroll departments. In this case, I have one. In that payroll department are benefits and deductions, and those can actually be set up to be global deductions. So just to show you an example, if I make my medical deduction $35 and I save and close, and I start a new batch, so it's time for July payroll. So I'm going to go ahead and do a July payroll entry. Just like before, I'm going to add all time cards. You'll notice that when I select the employee, that's now changed. So instead of it being $25 a month, it's now $35 a month. And the trick to this is that if I look at the employees, what I've done when I set that up is I set it up so that those are use default, meaning that for particular benefits or deductions, I'm saying, don't make this unique to each employee, make this a default for the entire company. What's the benefit here? If you have 300 employees you're doing payroll for, you don't have to modify 300 unique individual deduction or benefit amounts. You just set it up once and then you can maintain it in one place. And that kind of payroll facility is really what's a time saver, and even more of it's coming in the future. So where possible, Spire really enhances the experience or makes the experience easier, and payroll is a good example of that. Other areas in payroll, one of my favorites, when you're ready to do a payroll remittance, meaning pay CRA the source deductions, if you go in and choose payroll remit source deductions, the whole thing is made a whole lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and do a remittance. My cutoff period for my remittance schedule is the end of June. If I choose calculate, that goes out and figures out everything necessary for me to do the remittance. And for people out there who've done payroll, if you look at the screen, the web screen you use when you payroll remit source deductions, those are the questions that you're asked. What's your gross payroll? You see here in this remittance screen essentially matches what you use to remit CRA. So it's designed around the idea that when you go to the web page to remit your source deductions, you basically use this screen. But it's better than that, because in addition to doing all that, when I'm ready to post, I can actually post this and it will automatically do the journal entry for the source deductions and even make the payment if I've set up the accounts payable vendor, that CRA there. If I go ahead and post this, then essentially everything necessary to do the remittance, including the recognition on the GL side, is done. And the best part, in my opinion, of this is that it also keeps track of all your source deduction sort of activities from that point forward. So instead of having to go to the bookkeeper and say, can you find me the journal entry for the source deduction remittance, you have all that information recorded here. So again, these are things that are over and above what Business Vision is capable of doing, and that's our goal, is to keep adding that kind of functionality, adding more and more to the application as we go. So that's a quick foray into payroll. Let me take a look at company settings, because there's one setting that I know that if you're converting from Business Vision, you'll be interested in. That's called prohibit overshipping. If you've converted Business Vision data, one of the things you'll want to check first is whether or not that's on. That is exactly what it sounds like. If you've turned that on, Spire will stop you from selling into negative inventory. That's both good and bad. It's good in the sense that if you can avoid it, it's ideal not to sell into negative inventory. My experience is that people with a lot of inventory that they're dealing with regularly have to sell into negative inventory. So one of the things you might have to do is turn that off. And that'll allow negative in inventory if in fact there's a problem. We haven't yet received a purchase order, but we're ready to start selling goods, for example. Let's talk a little bit about inventory filling, because that's a big difference between Spire and Business Vision. Let's start that by going into sales, and let's add a new sale for ABC Auto, and I'm going to add a few items onto the sale. So they're going to buy T-rods A, T-Rod-B, and you'll see this is really easy. I'm just pressing tab and enter, and a T-Rod-C. So these items all fell into back order. As we can see, I haven't yet received any inventory, so I can go ahead and save that order, and those back orders are waiting there to be filled. In order to fill those, I'm going to create a purchase order, and I'm going to do it the quick way. I'm going to look up those inventory items. So I'm going to use the search facility to do that. I'll select them, and I'll use the create purchase order button to go ahead and create a purchase order for those. F9, just like in Business Vision, pops up the list, and I can pick the vendor I want to buy from. And I can proceed forward in the usual way and issue the purchase order, reload the purchase order, put in the cost prices and the quantities that I'm receiving, and so on. One nice thing in talking about time saving is that Spire does allow you to do a quick receive, essentially meaning that you can create a purchase order and receive it and post the vendor invoice essentially all in one go. Really useful if you've went out and bought something and you've come back with both the goods and the vendor invoice, or you've purchased something online and you're just trying to use a purchase order to recognize that. So I'll go ahead and click receive. Yes to a vendor invoice. Yes, that value is correct. And yes, I want to close the purchase order. So really simple, really quick. One little thing I'll note here as an advantageous thing in Spire is that you almost always want to run this receipts order fulfillment report. And the reason you want to do that is that one of the key questions you have when you receive inventory is, who's this for? So that receipt order fulfillment report shows you, here's all the sales orders to which these received inventory items might apply. So again, real time saver. Instead of just throwing those boxes onto the dock and letting somebody have to sift through sales orders to figure it out, you've immediately got a report that helps you with that. But the main point I wanted to get into here was the difference in terms of order filling. So let's go back into sales. Let's talk about a couple of different ways you can fill this order. The first thing to point out right out of the gate is that if I load up this order, it doesn't automatically fill. So Business Vision has a bit of a confusion here about the automatic order filling on or off. And my argument would be that it's too aggressive, meaning that either it doesn't fill at all or it fills every time you look at an order. And the problem with it is that that doesn't really match very well, especially with companies that have some limitation of inventory and they're trying to sort of parts out the inventory to the appropriate customers. So Spire has a bunch of different ways to handle this. One is the easy one, which is, the banner that tells you, do you want to ship available? If you say yes to that, it just goes ahead and ships the whole order for you. You can, of course, partially ship, so you can go in item by item and ship. I can also, if I back out of here, choose the order from within the list and choose fill back orders. And for the selected orders, and I can have more than one selected order, it automatically fills that order. So I can come back in here and I'll see that it's already filled. And then it has a third way of doing this, which I think actually makes a whole lot of sense relative to the way you would actually fill orders. So I'm going to force this back to back orders. And let's save and close this order. We'll reload it up and we'll treat this like a normal scenario. So I know that I need to fill this order. So I basically bring up my screen, go over to the fill order tab, and now there's a special function specifically for the purposes of filling orders. And if I happen to have a barcode reader, I can actually even use it here. I'm having trouble with my Bluetooth here, but let me see if I can get this to work. Just going to try and turn that on. So fill that in, tab that fills. Fill that in, tab that fills. Fill that in, tab that fills. So using a barcode reader, I'm just filling based on the physical quantities that I'm putting into a box to this order. It's smart too, because on top of that, if I try and overfill, it warns me that I've already picked the required quantity of this item. So this may not seem like a big deal on 3 items on it. It's a huge order with dozens, if not hundreds of items on it, because it's pretty easy to accidentally fill something. So again, 3 different ways instead of 1, and all of them are lot less aggressive than just fill this order or don't fill this order. You can be very surgical about your application of inventory. And in some businesses, that's a really important thing. Let's go ahead and click on OK. And let's keep on going. We talked about scanning and we talked about filling. Really, these are problems we're trying to solve. So we don't fill as aggressively. We allow a lot more user control. We allow you to scroll around within a large order. Oh, one other thing I should mention, when you're filling orders, one thing that Spire allows you to do is sort this grid. So for example, I'm going to sort by back order quantity. I can go ahead and just click this, or ship quantity or description or anything like that. That might not seem like a big deal, but when you're receiving large purchase orders, for example, and your vendor comes back to you with an alphabetized sort by description list, even though your purchase order wasn't sorted that way when you issued it, being able to sort by that description in order to start filling makes a whole lot more sense. It's a whole lot easier. The trick to it is that Spire will let you sort by those columns, but it doesn't persist them when you save it. So when you reload it, it'll always remember the order in which you created it. So very, very useful. These are defaults. Let me show you some things about settings. Spire has a lot of different settings that allow you to deal with how you want the company to work. And I wanted to show you some of the favorite ones that I have when I've converted Business Vision customers to Spire, ones that they get great value out of fairly quickly. So to do that, let's go into company settings. You'll notice one quick thing is that unlike Business Vision, you can get into company settings. So even if there was multiple people on a network all working, you can still get into company settings. You don't have to kick everybody out. That's because we optimistically lock that, meaning that only when the changes are rewritten do the users have to deal with those new changes. So that's an advantage. But I want to show a few things here. One I want to show is something called warn on zero. That's I want to be warned when there's a zero selling price in order entry. And I'm going to show you examples of these, so I won't spend too long explaining them. I want to enforce product codes in inventory, meaning that I want product codes to always be associated with an inventory item that I'm creating. I want to use suffix, which is a sales order setting, which I'm going to demonstrate. And I want to prompt on zero freight. So I'm going to say that I want to prompt on zero freight. One trick here is if you use the search function to find a setting, but you remove the search function, you can see all the other settings around it. So any related settings. So here I want to prompt on zero freight, but I also want to zero out freight after I've invoiced. So these are all settings I'm going to demonstrate in a second. And last but not least, a user setting I want to change is I want this user to not have to constantly deal with the bug message about back orders. So I'm going to say show back orders, and I'm going to turn that off. So show the back order warning. I don't want the back order warning. This is a way of eliminating extra steps when you're going through processing orders. Often when you're creating a sales order, you know there's going to be a back order. So I'll go ahead and save that. So let's quickly demonstrate those. To do that, I'm going to start by adding a new inventory item. Now let's call this G plate dash lug. And that's a gold plated lug nut. And I'll go ahead and save it. So what I'm expecting here is a warning message, or an error message in this case. And the error message is something I've turned on, which requires that I provide a product code. So let's go ahead and do that. A product code here, it's going to be in the tire category. And then in addition to that, Spire links the product code to the sales department and suggests to me that I probably want a sales department that goes with the product code. So I'll go ahead and say replace, and that fills in the product code for me. So the advantage here obviously is that now you can't misclassify something as easily. You have to pick a product code, and by picking a product code, you're suggested into a sales department that makes sense. The kinds of messes this avoids, it's hard to overstate. You know, you have a properly classified inventory, pricing is correct, the distribution on the GL is correct, and so on and so on and so on. So we've added that. Let's go ahead and save it. And then let's go ahead and try and sell it. So we'll do new sales order. Again, F9 looks up, or I can just start typing. And that will do a partial lookup for me. So I'll fill that in, and whoops, let's type in gold. That shows me the item I want to buy. And right out of the gate, I can see a couple of things that happen. One, I'm not bugged with a backorder message. There's no pop-up I have to press OK on. Two, it's warning me that this item has a unit price of 0, which is important. And it allows me basically at this point to go forward and fix it. So if I go ahead and say save and close that, I'm get bugged again about the 0 price, which is important. I'll prove that, and I can come back in and fix it. So let's do that. I'll look up my gold item. Again, finding things in Spire is super easy, and I can establish, there's my selling price, and my cost price I'm going to use when I purchase it is this. I'll go back to sales, load that back up again, and I'll explain something else while we're at it. Let's set the unit price to the proper unit price now, and let's put in a larger quantity. So I've got a quantity, I don't have any quantity, or I've got an order quantity, but I don't have anything to ship yet. So let's fix that. I'm going to go back to inventory. I'll look up my item, and let's do a quick adjustment. I'll click on it, click adjust, and here I'm allowed then to do an adjustment. So again, here's another big difference between Business Vision and Spire. Spire will never allow you to directly change a quantity. So you can't go into inventory and say, oh, in fact, I have 1,000 of these. You have to actually take some sort of an action. The proper action, obviously, is a purchase order. But in this particular case, I'm allowed to take action in terms of an adjustment. So I can say, well, we're going to receive 200 of those, let's say. The big difference here is that even though an adjustment is not the same as a purchase order, there is a GL transaction that takes place, and there's transaction history in terms of receipts, so that you can see exactly how this quantity was arrived at any point in time. Let's post that. I normally would want to post my adjustment and produce the report. I can print that out and go back into sales from this point forward, and let's close payroll in the background there. And let's load that back up again. So notice a couple things here. One, I'm getting prompted to fill. I'm going to avoid that and just fill partial. And two, I turned on backorder suffixing. So instead of that order number being 50,001, it's 50,001-0 currently. Let's invoice. And I'm warned about freight because I turned that on. So let's make sure that I've got a freight amount. That's a big order, so let's make the freight substantial, and let's invoice. We'll go to on account, and we'll produce an invoice. Some nice things here in Spire, if you've turned it on, you can actually automatically have a merged in logo as well as messages, and you can even have customer notes show up on these forms if you set things up appropriately. So lots of functionality in forms without having to even do any modifications. So the main thing I wanted to point out about that order number is you notice that it's changing now. So 50,001 is now -1 and will become -2 if it's invoiced again, and -3 if it's invoiced again, and so on. The main advantage to this is that at a glance, you now know something about the history of the order you're looking at. You can see that that order has been invoiced at least once in the past. You can always see that in Spire just by loading up the sales order and going to the sales history tab, where you can see the items or the invoices that have been produced in the past. But the advantage is that right from the list, you can quickly see that, in fact, this has been invoiced multiple times in the past. So nice features that you can turn on that are sort of enhancements of the kind of functionality that you're used to with Business Vision. So problem solutions. Problem inventory can oftentimes be set up incorrectly. That problem solved by forcing a product code to be required, and then that prompt for the sales department. Problem, it's easy to sell inventory with a 0 selling price. Well, it's not so easy if you turn on that function that basically warns on zero selling price. It's easy to forget to charge freight. Well, that problem's solved by a setting that makes sure that freight is prompted for every time you invoice or save. Problem, it's clunky when you're processing orders to constantly have to deal with dialogues that ask about things like backorder messages. Well, that again is solved by just turning that off on a user by user basis. And then last but not least, it's hard to know at a glance whether or not a sales order has been acted on in the past. Well, not if you turn on that suffixing functionality. That'll then let you look at the list quickly and see, this has been invoiced 4 or 5 times in the past, and I better get on this one because the customer is expecting to be finally invoiced for the full value of their sales order. So things that are useful from a standpoint of your business vision experience relative to some enhancements that Spire can provide for you. Some incidentals, a lot of people miss when they convert from business vision over to Spire. All these modules are all undockable. So if I just double click on this module, I can actually drag that over to another screen and continue to work in sales while I can take a look at my quantities on another screen. And that's true of all the screens in Spire. So you can actually have them undocked on multiple screens. You can, of course, always move columns around, limit columns, filter columns. So don't consider any of these screens to be written in stone. You can design them however you like. One of the things that I think business vision users find daunting at first is that there's often a lot of columns available in these lists. So if I scroll over here, I mean, everything that's available about inventory essentially is in these lists. One of the things that I usually recommend to business vision clients is turn off some of those columns that you don't require. You know, if there's something that if you never buy and sell in units of measure, there's no point having those units of measure columns displayed. And it's relatively easy to turn these off. Basically just right click on a column header and choose select all or select none, and you can turn on and off those columns. Same with selling price levels. A lot of customers only use one selling price level, so there's no point showing additional selling price levels unless they're appropriate. One of the key things, let's just close that and reopen inventory so it's docked again. One of the key things that's different between Spire and Business Vision is searching, and it goes all the way through the application. When I used to do Business Vision presentations, the most common question I used to get was, why can't I search on part of something when I'm in sales order processing? You know, I'm trying to sell something that I know includes the word sway bar, but it's not in the part number and it's not in the description. Spire really solved that problem in all the different modules. So for example, in the lists here, I can type kit and it's going to show me anything that includes the word kit. I could type in nut and it's going to show me anything that includes the word nut. It goes even farther than that. You know, if you've got access to a barcode reader, you can basically scan pretty much anything that that you want to, and it will look up the UPC code. Let me just get my barcode reader connected. It seems to like to kick off my microphone, so there I'm scanning for a barcode and it's finding that item. That's an important distinction to keep in mind because you don't see UPC codes in this list because they're a one-to-many relationship, meaning you can have multiple UPC codes for one item, but that doesn't stop them from being search criterion in sales processing, in transfers, in purchase order processing, and even directly in the inventory list. And then, of course, there are other kinds of searches that can take place. A good example here is things like customer, where I can type in the part of someone's email address, for example, and that will find it for me. I can type in their telephone number, any sort of aspect of their customer profile. One really useful aspect of searching is if you type in something that's included in a note for a customer, it can find that too. So in this example, let's say a customer was inquiring about something called a ZR-15. That finds that customer from that note. So if I load up this customer, I can see in communications, if I load up this note, that that's actually part of a note. So that's very, very useful. That basically means that I can be in a position where I remember that somebody asked me to communicate with a vendor about that ZR-15 part number, but I can't remember which customer it was. Well, it's as long as it's recorded in a note somewhere, you can search and find it. So ultimately, it's about as flexible as a search can get. From a technical standpoint, it's actually using something called a full text index, which really allows us to search on all kinds of different things in all kinds of different places. And that's quite an advancement over the kind of search capabilities that are in Business Vision, and it's quite quick as well. One other incidental thing, you'll notice we added recently the ability for you to see the company name in all of these windows. So you might ask the question, what's useful about showing me the name of the company when I'm sitting in a note? And the answer is it's useful because you could be running multiple companies. I can have, company A and company B, two different companies, my main company and my holding company. And while you're working on them, you can always tell based on the company name being in the window handle which customer this particular company belongs to. So it doesn't apply to everybody, but when you're using multiple companies, it can apply to you, and it becomes very, very helpful to know that. Email's an example of something useful as well. Let's show you that. So before I go into it, just to show you that in Spire, you can set up email, both at the company level as well as at the user level. So here I've got company email settings, and I can also have overriding email settings at the user level. In this case, I don't, but I can show you where you set that up. So company is basically the controlling email settings, and individual users can have different overriding settings. Once that's set up, it's really simple to use. I'll show you the really simple example, or the probably most common example. I'll go in, start a new sale for a customer. Let's sell to REN Builders. And what have I got here? I've got some quantities on these. Whoops. It's the lugs I want to sell. And let's go ahead and invoice. I'm going to need freight. I know that. So let's fix that first. And let's invoice. And let's go to on account. Instead of previewing for the purposes of printing or printing directly, I'm going to go to email. And what you'll see is you get an email screen, which is really pretty straightforward. To fill out the two, I just select one of the contacts or the contact I'm going to use. And if I've got them set up, I can select a template, and that automatically fills in the body of the email I want to send to the customer, and mail merges in their name. For example, if I choose preview, REN Auto Builders is who I'm selling to, as well as the subject. I'll go ahead and send that, and that produces the PDF file, attaches it to the email, and merges in the body of the email, which I'll see sort of an example of here. Just to show that to you, let me pull up my email so you can see what the other end of that looks like. And I'll go to send. And if I bring that over, you'll see that basically the customer on the other end sees this is the target email. REN Auto Builders, please find attach your invoice, whatever blurb you want to put into your mail merge document, as well as the attached PDF, which they can obviously open up and print themselves or pay directly from there. So email is really made easy here. You can also email across customers as well. So if you're producing statements, for example, you can produce statements across multiple customers just by doing multiple selections. So really easy and straightforward. We use SMTP email, which is far easier than trying to integrate with products like Outlook and things like that. So much easier and much cleaner than the way that Business Vision goes about email. Scanning, let's talk a little bit about that. Scanning is really, really useful. Let's show you in point of sale as an example. So what scanning basically means is if you're in a retail type of environment or a production environment that has access to barcodes, all you have to do to go about doing scanning basically is just go into a module that supports scanning. And if I get my barcode reader to cooperate, I'll just scan a bunch of different things here. So there's 1, 2, and 3. Point of sale has some nice functionality here in that as you're scanning, it will automatically accumulate. So if I keep scanning the same item, instead of it being individual items on the list, it just keeps adding to that particular thing. A lot of retailers I visit, I wish they did that so I didn't have such a long receipt. One of the advantages of point of sale over Business Vision's point of sale is it also allows you to directly go to order entry, which is a way of sort of setting aside a sale. So you'll notice here that I can set aside this sale, assign a customer to it, and that becomes a sales order, which started in point of sale. The obvious answer here is why would I do that? And the answer is, somebody builds up a large sale, but then they can't find their payment method, or they want to go back and look for something else. Rather than abandoning the point of sale sale, you can save it off as a sales order, recall that, and tender that later to the same payment method you would have used in point of sale. So very, very useful in terms of things like point of sale for scanning. Scanning becomes useful pretty much everywhere. You can scan to do transfers, you can scan to do purchase orders, you can scan to do sales orders. It becomes really useful when we start talking about lot numbers, and I'll show you an example of that in a second. Let's just close that and close that. Before I move off of talking about UPC codes, one of the key things for one of the clients I work with,
Rick, you got 10 minutes?
10 minutes, perfect. I'm coming coming down the bike. One of the key things here is that UPC codes support a one-to-many relationship. So when you're setting up a UPC code, you can actually have multiples pointing to the same part number. The rule being that you can't have the same UPC code for two items, but you can have different UPC codes for different units of measure. And you can even cheat a little bit here and actually provide alternatives. So if I say this item is actually also referred to as an XXX-4, and I go into sales, that becomes part of the search within sales as well. So if I say, let's type in XXX-4, it automatically recognizes that that's associated with that particular part number. So not only are UPC codes useful for making scanning easier, they're useful as kind of an alternate lookup methodology as well. And if I select that, that selects the tie rod. One big area where Business Vision Spire differs from Business Vision is lot numbering. We've made some nice enhancements recently. I've set up a lot numbered item here just to demonstrate that. If you're not sure what a lot number is, it's essentially like a serial number, except that you can have many. So if I look at the lot numbers tab, you'll see here that for this item, I have a quantity of 35, but I have 10 available of this lot number and 25 of this lot number. The enhancements we've made recently is that we've made seeing the history of lots much cleaner and much easier. So here I just select the lot number and I can see exactly what it was received on and exactly what it's been sold on or consumed on. And I can see it on purchase orders that are in progress. Some enhancements we made recently, you can automatically require that a expiry date be provided when you create the lot number. That's useful when you're both producing an item which is lot numbered and assigning the lot numbers at the same time. And from here, you can even do things like update the selling price and update the expiry dates directly from within the grids. I won't get into it in much detail, but you can actually have unique costs and unique selling prices right down to the lot number of a particular item, which is a very specific business case, but for those that need it, it's really powerful. It allows you to essentially produce something which has its own cost, even though there might be many of them under a single part number. Where this becomes really useful is if you've got UPC codes or these barcoded, it makes selling lot numbers even easier. Let me show you how to do it without the scanning, and then I'll show you with the scanning. So if I want to sell a lot numbered item, I select the lot numbered item, and I select the quantity that I want. Let's make it 2. And I have to choose the lot numbers. I can have that automatically do that by date as well. So here I can say, well, I want one of those, and I want one of those. And that drops those lots down to the grid. Another way to do it, and arguably a faster way to do it, is if you've got a barcode reader that's got these printed out on this, or you've got items that have the lot number printed out on the side of them, just come into order entry, press Control Spacebar, and now all I have to do is just scan the lot number, and it automatically knows what lot number to select and what part number to select. So barcoding and lot numbering tend to go together because it just makes the whole process a lot more accurate and a lot easier. So comparing Business Vision to Spire here, Business Vision doesn't have lot numbering. It does have serialized inventory. Spire takes that a whole lot farther, both in lot numbering as well as in serial number processing and tracking. coming to the end, one last really useful thing I usually tell people about is this. Let's go into company settings, and I want to show you in sales order processing under messages, there's a neat feature here that I'd suggest that almost everybody use. I'm going to put a message in here. Let's call it, please check price. And that opens up the ability for me to say that I want to display that message in sales orders. There's actually a whole lot more going on behind the scenes here, because if I go in, let's add a new part number for this. I'll add a new part number. Let's call this Air F, and this is a Pine Air Freshener. And let's say that costs 50 cents, but I haven't ordered it yet, and I'm really not sure what I want to charge for it selling price wise. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close that. It's going to warn me that I have to associate it with a product category. So let's do that. Let's put that under car service, and we'll make sure it has the right sales department as well. And let's go sell it. So we'll do sale, and we'll load that, and we'll sell our Pine Air Freshener. Again, I can search on any part of that. And immediately I have a problem because my unit price is 0, but we can fix that. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. Let's make that unit price something that makes sense. So if I'm the operator at this point, I might say, well, it costs 50 cents. I don't know what the selling price is supposed to be, but $1.25 sounds right. What you'll see now is you're still getting a warning message. And the reason you're getting a warning message is that while $1.25 might sound right, it's not high enough to meet the required margin that you established on the product code to which you associated this air freshener. Meaning that we've said we want to make an 80% margin when we're selling items in this category, and $1.25 over 50 cents does not achieve that margin. So again, really useful to not only have people not sell for 0 selling price, but sell for margins which you prescribe based on how you set up your product categories. So lots and lots of useful features like this that provide a lot of value over top of what you're used to in Business Vision. One last thing, I think I'm on my third one last thing, but this is, I promise, the very last thing. I mentioned that I always end off on talking about API examples. You'll notice that right now, if I go into sales orders, I've got 2 sales orders. I've written a little introduction to the API here where I'm going to create a sales order. And that just runs a little application that essentially creates a sales order for me. So there's the new sales order it created. It's for Ferry Auto. It has these inventory items on it. And if I show you the bottom, it's also got a note on the bottom that tells me a little bit about the order. Why am I showing that? Just quickly, because it's pretty easy to do this. The custom software I wrote to achieve that is basically this. So there's no compiled application other than that curl application that runs that program, if you like, which goes ahead and tells Spire through the server to create that sales order. That applies to purchasing, sales order processing, payroll time cards. Almost all of Spire basically supports this kind of functionality. Super useful for third-party developers, but I would argue that even somebody with some basic technical skills can create that kind of thing to save themselves a lot of time. So that's it. I think I've come roughly in on time. We're good from there.
Good. That's great. Thanks, Rick. So what we'll do is we'll go through questions.
Okay.
You can continue to add questions in there, and we'll continue, like I said earlier, to stay online as long as questions are coming in. But anybody who does need to drop off, thank you very much for joining us today. And if you do need to leave, we will have a recording for the session that we'll send out to you as well, so that you can catch some of the questions you may have missed. So starting at the top, how many years of records will be kept in Spire? Well, there's no limit. Basically, it just keeps adding, and you'll have as much history as you need to have, and including the fact that when you convert from Business Vision, if you've been using it for 20 years, we'll bring in 20 years of the data for you. So, okay, can we keep stock on the same item in different units of measure? Yes, we can have cases, units, lot, whatever you need. And basically it's stocked in this stocking unit measure, but you can consume it in whatever unit measure you need to, and it'll just do the multiplication for you. So
yep, you can do that right here. So basically data to add a, I just say case, how many go into the case, and now I can maintain it from there. I'll throw a little hint in there. If you're maintaining multiple units of measure, maintaining pricing actually has a nice facility in that you can change this price factor. So if you're selling cases and there's 10 in a case, Spire assumes you mean that the selling price is going to be 10 times the normal selling price. But if you put in a factor here, you can actually establish what the selling price is going to be, and it's always in relationship to this stocking unit of measure. So that saves you having to go through a whole lot of headaches setting up the price matrix just to cater for different units of measure.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. A couple of, does Spire automatically update the provincial federal tax deductions, like from 11,000 to 12,200? Yeah, with every payroll update we do in January and usually July, there's a procedure you do to when you install, and it updates the TD1 amounts. Usually the TD1 amounts are only done in January. I don't think I remember it being done mid-year, but it is possible still as well. But yeah, we as long as you're on our payroll subscription, you do get those table updates.
And people's TD1 status can change too, right? They get married.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. In TD1, however they fill it out. So we automate the basics, and then if they're at a higher rate than the basic, then what we do when we install the update is it does a multiplication of 1.2 or whatever it happens to be for that year. Can you show an example of creating a kit?
I think I have a kit in here I can show you. I'm trying to remember what I called it. Cleaning kit. So to create a kit, you specify that it's a kitted type, and when it becomes a kitted type, it gets a new tab called Kit Components. And in the Kit Components, you specify a couple of different things: what items go into the kit, as well as what the unit quantities are going to be, and whether or not you want to show options dialog, which is kind of a neat thing that makes kits interactive. If I don't show that, it just drops the kit and its components on the sales order. If I do show that, I get the ability to make some decisions when I sell the kit. I don't want to go too long on this, but let me just show you how that works. So if I sell that kit, it pops up an options dialog where, in the example that I was going to show in my presentation that was 5 hours long, was that you can swap out things like, I don't want leather conditioner, I want plastic conditioner, for example. So you can be decision making at this point. When you click on it, that drops that kit down, but the components are always available for you to see and manipulate. I think that's, without getting into too much detail, that kind of covers it. Yeah,
perfect. Okay, next question. Is there plans for a cloud-based version in the future? I will not talk. Yeah, as far as I'm going to say. Can date format be changed? Spire uses a date format however you've got your windows set up. So Rick's got his, looks like at year with 4 digits, month with 2 digits, and day with 2 digits. So that's what it's going to use, the date format. So we follow that. Same as with most other software, it'll follow whatever date format you use. We do not like two date years, so don't use a 2 date year.
Yeah, just to elaborate a little bit on that, that actually means that on multiple workstations in a network, you can have different date formats, and that's fine.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, however you like to put in a date, that's how you can set your own. With a bill of materials, can you assemble something and keep track of all the items, including the labor? We can do that with our bill of materials, but we've also got an enhanced product called Production Manager, which takes it a step further, basically allows you to schedule builds and commit raw materials and such as well. So there is actually online in our video site, there is a production order demonstration if you are interested in seeing in detail how that works. But even if you don't have it, we do allow you to do builds and add in labor components and such, yes.
You should pause on that point too, because one of the things that Business Vision's bill of materials doesn't allow you to do is commit raw materials.
Right.
And that's a huge difference, because the ability to commit raw materials means you can start a build without finishing it. You can start it, that commits the inventory, work on it for some period of time, and that inventory remains committed until you build the final good. And that might sound like a one-liner, but it's the difference between bill of materials working for some people and not for others. So
exactly. Okay, Inspire application can be installed in a virtual server or a cloud server. Do you have any compatibility issues? So at this point, you can install it onto a AWS Windows server like Azure. You can do it on a hosted solution that other people host. You can put it on your own cloud server and access it with RDP or remote desktop. But again, I won't talk about future on that right now at this point. There's some changes coming too. Okay, inventory adjustments. What are both sides of the GL entity? Debit inventory and credit what? It actually depends on your company setting, right, Rick? Because there's a company setting that says where you're going to adjust your inventory.
Yep.
Typically, it's a cost of goods account.
Yeah, I think it's variant by default, but but you can change that.
You can change it, to whatever account you'd like to go to. Okay. How do you customize invoices? Crystal Reports is what we use for our invoices at this point. Do you convert custom BV reports to Spire? No, they would have to be done again. Typically, what you do is you open up two windows, one with your Business Vision form, one with the Spire stock form, and then copy all the things like the text formats over and logos and whatever else, just drag and drop them, but then tweak columns and things that you need to do as well. And then Rick will show you there that you can actually select a logo as well from inside of company settings here. And if you browse for a logo, that'll automatically pop the logo on all the forms too. So then the same screen here also allows you to upload custom reports directly to it. And this is all web-based, by the way. So this can be run from anything. Even inside my office, I actually will dig a snapshot or a backup of my software, a backup of our data and drop it onto my iPhone. So you can operate this whole interface on any web device.
Yeah, I would reiterate, the one thing to remember is if the only thing you're concerned about is logos and messages, then you don't need to customize your form.
Yeah. If you're happy enough with our own forms, it's very simple to, like Rick said, to put messages on. You want to just pop up that company settings screen where it shows in the Inspire and in company settings, that you can just what is it under? I can't remember. Is it under general or something? Company reports, yeah, right there under messages. So you can pick a different message for all these different forms, and that message will automatically be populated on either the header or the footer of the form. You can see each form has that capability. So, okay, can the licenses be concurrent instead of dedicated? No, we use a named license. So if you've got a list of people, can you just go into users for a second, Rick? We only have one user at this point, but you can basically easily switch. If you had 10 users listed, you can basically tick on active or inactivate a user. So even though we do have named licenses, we make it very easy for you to toggle from one user to another. Or if you've got a 10 user with 12 people, you can disable 2 and add 2 very, very quickly with a couple of tick marks. And you can also do that in the web browser one as well as inside the company settings.
You'll see more and more we're heading towards a lot of this functionality being based out of a browser. It's just super convenient because it means you can be sitting at your workstation, and if you have the authority to do so, you can create a snapshot, you can restore data, you can add a user, you can do all kinds of different things, and more of that's going to be coming out of that kind of interface.
Yeah. Explain the difference between running it on a dedicated server versus a terminal server. Well, on a terminal server, you typically have the application and the server, Spire server, installed on the same machine, and you use an RDP connection using Microsoft Terminal Services or Microsoft Remote Desktop, and you'll connect right into it. Or some people, depending on how large you are, will also have multiple servers. So they have a terminal server plus a data server. And I was talking to somebody today, and they've got I believe they're using 170 users of Spire, or 140, I think, and they've got a dedicated data server and 3 terminal servers because they're located all over the US and they have many people that connect in, so they split the load off, and depending on how big your server is or what you're actually going to need for that, but yeah, that's the only difference is that on a terminal server you don't have Spire installed actually on your local workstation, but on the terminal server itself. Kind of convenient too, because of course when you do an update, it only has to be done in one place too. Okay, what takes the place of custom pack? Well, I don't think there's anything. Well, we've got everything except for one thing. We've got customer specific pricing. We've got user defined fields. What else is in custom pack, Rick? We do not have a super ticker.
I think that's the only thing we don't have actually is super ticker.
Yeah, but everything else that was in custom pack is included in Spire. You don't have to buy that separately.
Mail merge.
Mail merge, yes, we have that too. Yeah. Okay. Can you extend statements and invoices per account simply? And can I tack on? No, sorry, that's a different question. Can you send statements and invoices per account simply? Yeah, if you go to accounts receivable, you can actually go into a customer. Do you have one that has more than one invoice? Before that,
I can.
Okay, so let's hire a couple invoices in there. Okay, so well, it's not an invoice, but in either case, highlight that bottom one. Just highlight it and then hit print.
Sorry, where am I doing that?
Print right up next to the plus button. Yeah, sorry, yeah, that print, yeah.
Gotcha.
And then you can tick off both statement and invoice and hit email, and then what it'll do is it'll email all the highlighted invoices plus the statement to the customer at that point. So I think that's what you meant. Can I track costs by lot number? I'm not sure what that means. Can I track costs by lot number?
Yeah, you can. That's lot costing.
Costing, yeah. So yeah, okay. So, okay, right. Yeah, so we have a company setting for that. Basically, you turn it on, and then each lot number has its own cost and its own sell price.
Right here. Right
there, yeah. Lot sell, yeah. So as you receive an item, the cost of each different lot number will have its own cost.
Use some care doing that. Like it works great, but you are now tracking costs at the lot number level. So it's just more information to track. It's really useful for production. Like if you're building something and the costs are obviously going to vary from build to build. So it's useful for that, but don't turn it on without realizing that now you've kind of got FIFO costing within an inventory item in an average cost system. It works, but it's complex.
Yeah. Okay, when you change columns in a module, how do you save the changes? Well, if you haven't got a default set up, it'll save automatically, but a lot of people have a default set up. So if you're on inventory, like Rick said, he'll flip a few columns around or add, remove. And then if you go to, yeah, that's perfect. And then you go to filters now and then drop down. If you hit save default, what that does is it makes it so that every time you come in, it's going to use this setup. But if you can also go save preset as, and you can give it a name, and therefore you can recall it at any time. That way you can have multiple setups, and then you can just decide to add it to the module list and give it to everybody in the company. When you click OK, you'll notice underneath of inventories, that one called quantity just got added to the bottom. So you've got your default one, and you've got your quantities one.
Oh,
so either way.
I didn't save settings on that one, but yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, so he didn't save column settings when he did that one, so it just saved what he had on the layout. So, but remember that default one, because some people are confused. They've saved a default in the past, and then they're wondering why it doesn't save when they come back there next time, because it'll always come back to the default if you've got one saved. Is the API target the local install or the server? It's the server. So it's basically the server name, and then Rick, you want to show them up in under tools? I think it's under tools, isn't it? Server documentation, is it? Or is it under help? No, it's under help, sorry. And then server documentation. And then, yeah, so if you click on the API documentation, so that number at the top where Rick's IP address is, instead of that, you would put in your server's name, so Spire server or whatever it happens to be. And if he would have been on a server, it would have brought that name automatically up there. So yeah, and the same as the administrator software that Rick was showing you, that is also, you put the server name in there if you wanted to see the server itself.
Just to elaborate a little bit on this, if you're experimenting with this, and I highly suggest that if you're a Business Vision user, you do that, because it's so easy to do. You basically install Spire, bring your Business Vision data over, convert it, and then you can work with it as much as you'd like. But while you're doing that, your server is the workstation you're on. And it's often referred to as local host, meaning that the server software is running on the same machine that the client is running on, which is the Spire desktop application. So I know that can be a little confusing for Business Vision users at first, because there was no such thing as a server in the Business Vision world. But in the Spire world, there's a server and a client, and it's easy to have both of them on one workstation. When you finally do go all the way over to Spire, you're likely to have a server which has its own name and is remote relative to your workstation. But for playing around, there's no problem having a server and a client both on the same workstation.
Okay, next question. Is there a migration path from QuickBooks or Sage 50? Not yet. We are investing in the QuickBooks one now, so we hope to be able to tell you something about that before the end of the year. Okay, next question. Does the user need to be an admin account of Windows to use Spire? Because I was told BV requires the users to be admin on a Windows machine. Nope. No, sometimes you need to be an admin, or not an admin, but you have to have the rights to install software. So other than that, you don't need to be an admin to run it, so no.
The only caveat there might be at the server. Like, you might need to be an admin to install Spire to create the directories on the server.
Right.
But that's, yeah. A, it won't apply on a workstation, and B, when you get to the server level, that's relatively easy to establish.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Any chance of a rental module? No, we had one in BV Essentials. We didn't do one for Spire. There is a third-party one out there, I think. I'll have to check on that. I heard some rumor that it wasn't ready to go, but I'll find out about that for sure. Is there a service module for Spire? Yes, there is. It has. We have a service manager module which allows you to track repairs to certain equipment. So it remembers the customer's model, serial numbers, and such, and it can be pictures be attached. I believe there's communications inside of equipment.
Yep, there is.
There is? Okay, so yeah, you can attach links to pictures as well.
There's a really good video actually available for Service Manager, overview of what it does. We can probably provide that link to the YouTube video. Yeah,
we can do that. Yeah, it's actually on Spire's website under the support and then videos. You'll see it there too. Although that's just being reprovisioned right now, so if you happen to hit it today when we're reprovisioning, you might not be there, but it'll be back up very shortly. We're just about to relaunch a new site that organizes the videos better. Are all licenses on Spire servers, or can they be local server? We're in a rural area with poor internet with lots of dropouts. No, you don't have to be on the internet to run Spire, but if your server is outside your office and you lose internet, then no, you cannot run Spire at that point. You have to be connected to your server. Can EDI or what? Go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, just to elaborate on that point, the only thing you really need internet access for in that scenario, if you've got a local server and a local area network, is to initially license the server. Right. That's it.
Yeah. Can EDI orders in Spire order.txt from customers be imported into Spire orders? Well, there's an order.txt file that has the right fields in it. We do have a sales order import routine, yes. So Rick's just showing you there under tools import, and then you can pick sales orders, and then you basically pick a text file, a CSV file or Excel field, and then the fields, the Spire fields just need to be mapped to those fields. And once you've laid that all out exactly the way it should be, you save that layout, and then you just have to click import after that, and it'll just bring them all in.
For reference, this is way more powerful than the Business Vision import. It's easier to define, but more than that, once you've saved it, as Al said, you can actually even have it automatically post the invoice if you want to. That's what that post immediately button is all about. There's even a way to set that up to be somewhat automated as well.
Yeah. Okay, you're planning to upgrade the current version 10 of Postgres database to the latest one of 12 or 13, soon to be better performance. We are working on the conversion to 12 now, so yes. 13 we won't do yet until it's been around for a while. Can your email function support Exchange? We don't need to, because you just have to set up your SMTP, and we'll just use that. And as long as your email is set up with IMAP, then all your items sent out of Spire will also show up in your sent items in Spire as well, or in your Exchange as well. But as long as you know those SMTP settings on user and password, you're good to go. When sending an invoice with a statement, can you type in a message as well? Yes. So when you do the email, you can then type in a body of a message that goes along with it, saying things like, attach, find the invoices you requested, let me know when we can pick up a check, or whatever you want to do there. And then, of course, after that, you can also now save a communication note to remember to follow up with that person on next Friday as well, and it'll pop up on your calendar automatically. Are there major differences in production? I'm not sure if you mean differences in production or differences in Production Manager, our software. So I'm not sure what the differences you mean. There is definitely differences between having production and not having production, because the Production Manager software allows you to, like I said earlier, commit product and schedule purchasing and schedule builds and things like that. So
I think can I jump in there? Because I think
yeah.
what that might mean is, what's the difference between bill of materials and production manager? And it is actually quite different, because it's a whole separate module in Spire that allows you to have a whole document production process that has its own sort of packing list types and form production. You can, as we mentioned, commit inventory in the process. You can even directly integrate a sales order to production, meaning take a sales order, enter in an item that you produce, create a requisition, which will create a production order, which then gets worked on. So it's very elaborate relative to what business is.
Yeah. Okay, next question is, where I run Spire on a single machine with 2 hard drives, can I store data on one and the program on the other? Well, the program installs on your local computer anyway. The Spire server goes on to the server. You could also put the Spire itself onto a different drive. You can redirect it to wherever you want for the workstation. So either a local workstation, or if you run on terminal server, you can run it. You can install it into, C program files, Spire Bob's version if you want to, but just remember that every time you redirect to different places other than our defaults, just makes support a little harder, because if we're trying to help you with something, you have to kind of figure out where everything's located. But where Rick's pointing to you there right now, you'll see that's where the actual data, the SQL data, is stored. So
I'll throw in maybe a quick hint here for Business Vision users. Don't expect to make a backup by just zipping up a directory and copying it to a zip drive or something like that. That's not how SQL databases work. So what you want to do when you make a backup basically is go in here, select the company that you want to make a backup, and choose create snapshot. What that does is creates a snapshot, which is actually kind of cool because it's quite small relative to the data that you're backing up. That backs up the data, and then you basically just click on that to get a link to download the data. It's way smaller than your Business Vision backups, and it's complete, meaning that you can restore that backup and get to that state. You can make backups while the software's running. So you can do a backup while 5 people are working on something, and it handles that just fine. It's a very different regime of how data works than what you're used to with Business Vision.
To show them the schedule as well, Rick, for the backup or for snapshots.
So you can set intervals and.
Yeah. Yeah, so then that's the number of snapshots you keep, but remembering this is getting stored on your server. So if you have a server problem, it's not going to help you any. So those snapshots need to be still taken off site.
Good point.
Yeah. Okay, can any Visa, MasterCard credit processor be used, or are you restricted to a provider associated with Spire? We've only got one that we have integrated built right into Spire. So when you go into an invoice, hit market paid by Visa, it processes, but we're working on some more as well. Yeah, there it is. There's a setup for Payfirma. It's called, a company based out of Vancouver. Rates are very good. I've heard from everybody who's switched to them that their rates are better than others, and even ourselves, when we switched to them, we saved quite a bit by switching. Do you have a website that have all the integrated packages? Rick, you want to just bring up spiresystems.com?
You can tell I don't go here.
Yeah. And then under solutions, I believe. Yeah, third-party solutions on the very bottom. And these are a list of people that that have product that connects directly with Spire. Okay, again, credit card. And does Payfirma work in the US? Yes, it does. Payfirma has capability for US and Canadian, and it works in both currencies too.
Do you want to throw in a sentence since we brought up US about Avalara?
Yes. So anybody who's in the US that has trouble with sales taxes, Avalara is a sales tax company that does all of your tax calculations for you. So basically, you put your items on the order, and based on the ship to address or ship from, whatever happens to be for that particular tax jurisdiction, and will automatically charge the correct taxes. And then Avalara will print you a monthly report that tells you who to submit the taxes to, or you can take that up a notch and they'll actually pay the taxes for you as well. So if you check out avalara.com, you'll get an account with them, and then all you do is once you've got the account with them, you set it up here. They obviously do charge a fee to do that, but from what I understand, people in the US that use them, it saves a significant amount in time, huge time, plus prevents all the penalties that are possible as well. So one company in particular was telling us that they spend about $100,000 a year. Now they're, again, quite a large company, but $100,000 a year in tax calculations, compliance, and a person to figure that all out. Plus, usually there's a fine here or there for doing it wrong. So it's well worth it. So, all right. So that brought us to the end of our questions. Again, thank you for all those that are still with us. If you got any other questions at all, just get a hold of the person who's introduced you to Spire, and they can get that to us. And if you're interested at all in Spire, contact them. If you've connected with us and you are not working with anybody at the moment, you can just contact us here at sales@spiresystems.com, and we can set you up with somebody that can install a trial version for you and convert your business vision data so you can play around and see how well it's going to fit your needs. So other than that, Thank you all very much for coming. Rick, thank you for doing that presentation. It was great.
Yep. Thank you for your patience with our technical glitches there, but I'm glad everybody stuck around.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.